I am putting on my silly suit to explain a few things today because a lot of times, okay, anyway, my husband, my family wants to distract me today. I should have just put this camera over there so you could have seen what he was doing because he's a hot mess. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm only going to be on for a few minutes. I'm supposed to go, but I haven't been on in a while, and I really want to get back in the habit of showing up and explaining in more detail of what's going on with our mommy tummies and how we can better work towards tightening and being strong, not just for aesthetics, but also just for functionality. I know with my TikToks, if you guys have been following me for a while, or if you haven't followed, definitely follow if you want some mommy tummy help or core rehab help if you have any issues with just a loose mommy tummy, back pain, leaking, or any kind of pelvic floor issues. Definitely follow. But it's really cool when I come on live because I can really hear your questions, really know what kind of content that you'd like, and kind of get just into more detail than what I do on my little TikToks. So anyway, I'm going to get started by just kind of giving you a little background for myself. I'm 40 plus mom with 4 kids. How old am I? 41-year-old, and I have 4 kids. And after my second kid, probably about a year after my second child, I realized that all the exercises that I had been trying for my mommy tummy weren't working. I remember having somebody specifically asking me if I was expecting again, and I had lost all the baby weight. So like you can see, I'm a pretty on the thinner side. I lost all the baby weight, but I still had this like boop, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. Like I had run a all women's gym. I had taught aerobics classes specifically on the core, and I didn't understand why I was still struggling with this loose mommy tummy even a year postpartum. So I literally looked pregnant. And some of my TikToks, you'll probably see some of the pictures, my before pictures. Anyway, so the biggest blow came to me when I actually pinched a nerve in my back. I was literally like in the bathroom and I turned my back this way. And when I turned back, I was literally stuck. I couldn't stand up straight. I couldn't carry my baby. I couldn't take care of myself or my child. And it was really frustrating. And I went to the doctor. Well, really, it was like a physical therapist and a chiropractor office. And I went there and the physical therapist was like, hey, you have a weak core. You're going to have to really strengthen your core. And that's the cause of your back pain. And I was like, wow, I didn't, it's one thing to deal with a mommy tummy and realize like, okay, the aesthetics of it can be bothersome, just not having our body being the same as it was pre-baby. But to not be able to function properly really, really got to me. And from there, I just started researching. I was like, okay, sit-ups aren't working, planks aren't working, burpees aren't working. Like those were all the go-to exercises when we look up, like, what are we supposed to do in our core? And I found out that we really needed to have a different approach, and that the problem wasn't really being addressed. And that's why I wasn't having the success I needed with my core. One of the things I found that I had, and there wasn't a lot of information on it at the time, but now I've found so much since then. And the one of the problems that I had, beyond just having a loose, deep core, I had diastasis recti, and I didn't know what diastasis recti was. Diastasis recti is actually ab separation. And what I mean by ab separation, because that could sound kind of scary when I say ab separation. Let me lower this just a tad. Okay, so when I'm talking about ab separation, I'm speaking of actually a stretching of the connective tissue in the core. So before we have babies, this is pretty much somewhat of what our core looks like if we didn't have skin on top or any kind of fat on top. You'd see the muscles and you'd see this white stuff. The white stuff is fascia or connective tissue. And what happens during pregnancy is all of this stretches. And so you get a stretching of your muscles. You get a stretching of the connective tissue that connects the muscles together. And when this midline stretches, it can look something like this. So instead of having this thin line of connective tissue, it stretches apart and can look something more like this, okay? It can look even wider. This is like a random piece of paper. And it can look something wide like this. Like I've worked with ladies who've gone through my program whose separation or stretching of that midline connective tissue looked something like this. It can look like this. It can just be towards the bottom or towards the top. So what that is it's connective tissue that has stretched because the belly has stretched when we had the baby there. And that's called diastasis recti, or ab separation. How do you know if you have that? Let me just do a really quick little thing that you can test yourself right now to kind of give you an idea if you have that. So what I'll have you do is just lean back. You can be standing, sitting, but lean back. Don't actually touch anything behind you, but lean back and look down. See if you see any kind of bulging or doming coming up through your midline. Lean back, look down, as if you're kind of going back into a V-sit or something. Look and see if you see any bulging coming up through your midline. It would look something like this. Here, I'll get closer. See that? How that's kind of bulging at the midline. If you see something like that, put me in the comments so that I can see what we're seeing and other people can kind of see that too. If you lean back and when you look down, if you see bulging coming up through your midline, I want you to put me in the comments so that we know we're not alone here. Yes. Okay. I see user 31239. Okay. I see that you put me. Yeah, this is so common. It's actually, yes, Sarah Rizwan. Yes. Michelle Star Powers. Yep. I see another me, BYU. Yeah, me. So this is actually, I have bulging. Yeah. So I'm curious, for those of you who said me, is this the first time that you've heard of diastasis recti? Did you know anything about it at all? Is this the first time that you've noticed that bulging? So what you are seeing is that midline tissue that has stretched out. We call it diastasis recti. Diastasis literally means separation. Recti is referring to the rectus abdominis, or your six-pack muscles. So what's happened is during pregnancy, that midline stretched, and instead of being thin, it's something wider like this. And when the pressure increases inside of our core, like when you lean back, you increase that pressure, it pushes through the weaker area of your tummy. And right now, the weaker area is that midline tissue because it's stretched during pregnancy. Laura, no, I've known, but I don't know what to do about it. Okay, I knew once. My midwife told me I had it once baby was born. Okay, yes, that's awesome. So it's becoming more known. I mean, back when I had my babies, not that it was forever ago. I mean, my youngest is 3, my oldest is 14. But I found out about it through the weak core, through like my physical therapist, my midwife, but nobody was really giving me any clear guidance as to what to do about it. And so that's why I started on this journey, because I was like, no, I can't just like have an issue and not be able to do anything about it. If there's something I can do, I want to do it. So that's how I really got into this, was kind of more trying to figure it out for myself, because I'm like, I used to run an all-women's gym. I used to work with people and helping them, tighten up their bodies, strengthen their bodies. And how do we not know about this, I used to work with first-time moms, and it just seemed like this was some kind of enigma. Like, well, what do we do? And then when you go on YouTube, you get all these different exercises, and those exercises can often make them worse because they're not geared towards the actual problem. And so here's what I'm talking about for those of you who are who did that little test where you lean back, you look down, and you see that bulging at your midline. That's diastasis recti, or ab separation. So very quickly, one of the things that you want to pay attention to when you're choosing exercises for your deep core is you want to make sure that those exercises aren't making the problem worse. And that was something that I ran into a lot. And with people that came to me wanting to, start my exercises or do my programs, they found that, like, one lady, she came to me, she'd done a CrossFit program. She said, hey, I went in to try to have like abs of steel. I came out with a pointier belly. And that was because she did exercises that actually pushed that midline tissue more and excessively, and it made that more pointy and actually made her situation worse. And so before I get off of this live, I want to explain to you how to know if an exercise is going to make it worse or better. So one of the things you want to avoid is seeing that excessive doming. So if you're doing an exercise and you're getting excessive doming coming up through the midline, think about it. You're pushing on that already stretched out tissue. If you keep pushing and pushing and pushing on it, you could end up stretching it even further, okay? And so when you are doing any kind of exercises, let's say you have your favorite person you follow on YouTube, and you're doing their exercises, and if you are doing something that causes excessive doming coming through the midline, I want you to stop doing that exercise. That exercise is potentially making that situation worse. And there are a couple things that I would want you to do about that. One is you'd want to learn how to better engage your deep core muscles. And I'll do a quick exercise before I get off of here within the next 5 minutes. Excuse me. Getting over this cold. Anybody else have colds? Like, is this like cold season? Yeah, probably. But anyway, I'm going to do with you a quick exercise before I get off of here in the next 5 minutes. But if you don't have time, know that I have free exercises in the link in my bio. If you go in the link in my bio, you can get a free guide, free exercises, full-length exercises to get started. They were the first exercises that I put together when I was really discovering what was going on with my body and how to heal it. So if you check the link in my bio, you'll find my free guide that goes over all of this information, and it also has a bunch of free exercises there, full-length free exercises that you can start checking out. Anyway, so the biggest thing I would want you to pay attention to when you're doing any kind of exercise that you find, I would want you to pay attention to excessive doming. So even just now, like we just did like a self-test, right? We lean back and we look down, and what do we notice? Some of us noticed that we had excessive doming coming up through the midline when we lean back, right? So if we're trying to prevent that pressure from coming out through our midline, we would probably want to not do exercises where we're leaning back and we're creating this excessive doming at the midline. And when I say excessive doming, I mean when you feel the doming, if it feels very firm, that is excessive doming. If it feels squishy when you touch it, that means it's not excessive. Okay, so if you're doing an exercise, you see a little doming, but it's very squishy, then it's not excessive and it's okay. You don't want to be afraid to exercise or afraid to move. You want to make sure that you're not doing a move that's pushing that already stretched out tissue all the way to its max. If you've pushed it out to its max, you can tell because it's very firm. That means it's gone all the way to the max that it can stretch before it stretches further. Let me know if you have any questions there in the comments. If I don't get to them, feel free to message me like on Instagram or Facebook and we'll get to you. Montserrat Sanchez, thank you so much. I'm glad that it's making sense. Sometimes I get to talking and I'm like, does this make sense? So definitely let me know by putting it down in the comment. If you have any, if you want to learn more about this, I have some like mini courses that I put together that you can access it in the link in my bio, and you can get free exercises there too. So check it out. Yeah, so the biggest thing you're going to want to do is check when you're doing an exercise, especially sit-ups. Like you'll see in a lot of my TikToks, they'll say, don't do sit-ups, do this instead. You know, this is better than sit-ups. And that's because I pick on sit-ups because sit-ups are often like one of those things that we think are like a go-to exercise for the abs. And for us that have a really stretched core, you know, which is often the case when we have a mommy tummy. And by a mommy tummy, I mean that we had a baby in our belly. So if we had a baby in our belly, lots of things were naturally very stretched out. And doing sit-ups really doesn't help because we have like several layers of abdominal muscle, and the superficial, I'm trying not to get too, you know, sciencey or anything, or technical, but we have several layers of muscle. You have the rectus abdominis right here on the top. That's a very popular muscle to like exercise because that gives us that six pack. So a lot of times when we go on YouTube, we see exercises that focus on the external parts of our core because it gives us those ab line looks, right? Like sit-ups. Sit-ups is a movement that really focuses on the rectus abdominis or your six-pack muscles. It's a flexion, exercise. You're flexing, and that's what really works that front part. But as you can see, when we lean back, let's pretend like we're doing sit-ups. Now, every time you're leaning back, wherever you are right now, you can lean back, okay? When you lean back, if you look down and you're seeing excessive doming coming up through your midline, especially if you press it and it's firm, you're stretching that, you could be, let me not say you're stretching it, but you're putting extra pressure on that midline, and that's the part we're trying to heal back flat, okay? We're trying to heal that back strong and tight. And doing sit-ups puts a lot of pressure there and is actually pushing out. And if you're seeing that excessive doming, then you want to back up from sit-ups and do exercises that work the more inner layers of your core. So let me go through that very quickly. I'm going to try to take just 2 more minutes to kind of go over this and then kind of help you get a feeling for what it's like to tighten the part of your core that helps to draw your tummy in instead of bulge it out. Because I would imagine for most of you online, for a lot of us, we might not be strong enough to do a sit-up properly. And when I say that is when I tell ladies, like, they'll say, well, are your exercises appropriate for me? Or is your program appropriate for me? I'm saying, my exercises are appropriate for you if when you do a sit-up, you can't keep your stomach flat while you do them. So if you're leaning back, and your stomach starts to bulge, or you get midline bulging, then your core layers are not strong enough to hold that, to do that sit-up properly. So a sit-up, when done properly, you're going back and you're coming back up, but you're able to keep your stomach scooped out and flat, okay? If you can't do that, then your core is not strong enough for that exercise. So it's not that, like, you'll see me say this all the time on TikTok, stop doing sit-ups, or do this instead. That is for those of us who cannot keep their abs flat when we do sit-ups, okay? So sit-ups aren't bad. You just have to be strong enough to do them properly, okay? All right. So we have the external part of our core. We have the rectus abdominis. We have the obliques. But deep underneath those more superficial layers, we have a muscle called the transverse abdominis. I talk about this a lot when I do lives, which I haven't been doing lately, but I'm going to get back to it. I promise. I'm going to try to get on here weekly. I say that, but I haven't been doing it. But I'm going to do it, okay? A transverse abdominis is literally like a support belt. So this is like a support thing if you need something from a physical therapist, almost kind of like a waist trainer, but not really, because I'm not a big fan of waist trainers. But your deepest core muscle literally acts like this, okay? So underneath your rectus abdominis, underneath your obliques, you have a muscle called the transverse abdominis. The transverse abdominis, with its connective tissue, connecting the muscles together, the transverse abdominis muscles together, wraps around your waist, and when you engage it, it cinches your waist in, okay? So like when you engage your rectus abdominis, it's really kind of trying to flex you. It's trying to flex you. When you engage your obliques, it's trying to cross you, right? It's trying to do this. But when you engage your transverse abdominis, which is your deepest core muscle, it's literally trying to cinch your waist in. It is your core stabilizer horizontally, okay? It helps to keep you upright and stable. So it just has a different action than the other muscles, the other core muscles that we have there. And that's also because it tries to hold us in this way. When we're pregnant, that's the one that really has to loosen up, because the baby can't grow if we have a muscle holding us in this way. So during pregnancy, this muscle loosens up. It has to get loose so that the baby can grow in the womb, okay? So now we have this loose muscle here to accommodate for the baby. We have our baby, and this muscle can still be loose postpartum, okay? And if this muscle is loose postpartum, and this is our stability muscle that holds our waist in this way, this is why some of us might be dealing with back problems, because this muscle helps to keep our back nice and supported. It helps to keep our spine stable. And if it's loose, we're having an issue. Anybody here have back pain? That was one of the biggest issues I had, which is why I started, getting into what I'm into now, like helping other moms with this, because I had horrible back pain. And it's in part because all this is pretty loose. I see a hand there. I see a hand, lower back pain. Yes. I do all the time. And I'm curious to know, those of you who have back pain, do you also have pelvic floor weakness? Sometimes we find when we're working with women that those of us who have a lot of chronic back pain also have pelvic floor issues, whether it's incontinence or hip pain or things like that. I'm just curious. So if you have also accompanying like pelvic floor issues, those things are often very connected. And that's why in my paid program, we address all of them. We address the back pain, the loose mommy tummy, the pelvic floor issues, because they're so connected. Once you start working on one, you kind of have to work on them all together because they're just connected. But either way, but do know I have free exercises in the link in my bio. I have all this I'm going to explain in the free mini course, and I have like 30 maybe full-length free exercises that you can get started today and start feeling like what it feels like to work the appropriate muscle to really start feeling strong in your core. Okay, so back to the transverse abdominis. So the transverse abdominis, your deepest core muscle, wraps around your waist, cinches your waistline in. After baby, it can still be pretty loose. And sit-ups aren't tightening this muscle. Sit-ups tighten the external muscle of the core. Now, if you know how to engage that deep core muscle properly, you can kind of engage it with a sit-up, but you have to know how to engage that muscle. That's the muscle that, like when you lean back to do a sit-up, if you try to fight to keep your stomach flat as you're leaning back, that's the transverse abdominis fighting to keep your tummy flat when you do a sit-up. A lot of times when I see women do sit-ups, their abs bulge, especially if we've had babies. The abs bulge. That's because the deeper core muscle, the transverse abdominis, is what helps to keep it flat. And you can actually have a strong rectus, strong six-pack muscle, and have a weak, deeper core, a weak transverse abdominis muscle, the one that cinches your waist and flat. That's why when we go to do a sit-up and we get that bulging, I realize that's not an appropriate exercise for us, because we have to strengthen our deep core first so that it can hold it in nice and flat, okay? I know I've said a lot of things. If you have any questions, definitely check out the link in my bio, because I have a little mini course that goes through all these things in detail. I'm going to try to get back on every week. I might jump on tomorrow around the same time, actually. And then there's some free exercises, full-length exercises there as well. Okay, last thing I want to do, now that I've kind of explained that, I wanted to explain that because I think a lot of times we just focus on the external muscles, when it's the deepest core muscle that we need to be concerned with a bit more, because it's often the one that we'll lose. They should all be strong, and they should all be strong in like balance with each other. We don't want a strong rectus and a weak deep core, or strong obliques and a weak, deep core. You just want it all to be strong, and that deep core often gets neglected. So before I go, very quickly, I want you to feel what it feels like to activate the deep core, because we know sit-ups activate that superficial core. We know we can do some bicycle crunches or something to activate the obliques. But what about the deep core that cinches your waistline in? Okay. So what I want you to do, one thing that where you can immediately feel like your deep core, is by sitting up straight. Again, I said the deep core muscle is a stabilizer. It helps you stay upright and straight, right? So one thing I want you to do is to pretend as though somebody has you like a little puppet. You got a string coming up from your spine all the way up. It's connected. And you pull up by that top part of your head. So you're kind of pulling up. And if you can see, I'm going to relax. You see how my stomach kind of pushes out there? Now I'm going to pull up. You see how my stomach went in? So if you pull up, you automatically are going to be engaging your transverse abdominis, okay? That's why some of us might feel really tired just trying to keep proper posture throughout the day, because that transverse is a little weak, okay? So we're going to start by just sitting up nice and tall. just lengthening up through our spine. So imagine your spine, the spaces between your vertebrae are like creating more space and you're lengthening up. You're going to already feel a little engagement there, okay? Now I want you to pretend as though you are putting on a tight pair of jeans, okay? You put on the tight pair of jeans and you're going to zip up the jeans without getting your skin caught. You don't want to get that skin caught in the zipper, right? So you just kind of, not from up here, but from down here. So don't suck in your belly button here. I want to see that divot. I just want to lower abs where you bring it in, okay? And I want you to feel what that feels like. Okay, that's one imagery. Of all the imageries I usually tell people, that's usually the one that really gets them feeling like they're activating that muscle. Here's another visual. Again, I want you to lengthen your head up, okay? As though you're separating the vertebrae. You feel a space coming between. You almost want to feel like you're separating your ribs from your pelvis. Just lengthen up. And then pretend as find your hip bones, all right? At least we know a good idea where they are. I want you to pretend as though you're bringing your hip bones together, okay? Bringing them together, all right? And you're gonna feel like a flattening of the lower abs a bit, okay? And that is, you feel it. Yeah, I see that, Maddie. You feel it. How long to hold it? You know what? Try to hold it for just 5 seconds and give an exhale as you do it. Just the lower abs. Hold that. 3, 2, 1. Nice inhale. Okay, that is your deep core. Okay, that's that muscle that draws it all in. Okay, and there are ways of strengthening the deep core. There are exercises that specifically work that deep core, and also ways of progressing. Because you want to do that, try holding it for 5 seconds. Try doing that throughout the day. And you'll start feeling it. I promise you, if you do that 10 times, you're going to feel that tomorrow. Like, it seems so subtle. Like, when people go through my program, they're like, oh, are these crazy hard exercises? I'm like, no, they're actually not hard. Like, people will say they're sitting there, they're listening to my voice, they're doing my exercise, and they're like, man, this just seems almost relaxing. And then they feel it the next day. They're like, yo, I felt that, because they're just super focused on the right area. And that's what makes all the difference. And if you exercise with that intention, you're going to notice a difference. Even if you love sit-ups and you realize that you want to do them, like, that's not a problem. But, start from the top and hold that in. First, hold the lower abs in. Only go back as far as you can before you see bulging. You don't want to see any bulging here. So go as far as you can and do that. Like, if you start doing your abdominal exercises with that mindset of really integrating your deep core in the exercise, you're going to notice a difference in your core. Because a lot of times people get discouraged because they're doing all these sit-ups, and nothing's happening. And that's because we're not getting the part of the core that we really need to get. Okay, ladies, will it be sore after? I promise you it will. If you do that 10 times or that 3 times a day, like 3 sets throughout the day, you'll feel that tomorrow for sure. My ladies usually report that back to me, that they feel that the next day, because you're working a muscle that you probably haven't worked very much, but you'll start noticing a difference. Do some of, if you do those 3 sets today, do them 4 more times throughout the week. I promise you'll start noticing differences. You'll want to advance those exercises, and that's why my program is, we do one thing for a few weeks and then we progress, because you want to always progress so that you're continuing making gains, okay? Anyway, I'm so over time. I gotta go. My daughter wants to go to this Thai restaurant. She's been begging me. I hope that she likes it, because now we're about to go. And we'll see. She probably wants to wear like a princess crown or something. And these will also help with incontinence. They can help some if you do them properly. In my program, definitely. If you missed anything, please check out the link in my bio. All this information I talked about today, I have it in my free mini guide. All the things I ever talk about on TikTok, for the most part, I have it in my free mini guide, and the link in my bio have full-length exercises, including this exercise that we just went over. It's all there, so you won't miss a thing. Check it out in the link in my bio. Okay, gotta run. Love you guys. Bye.